Okay, we discussed over here, we have an argument. When the Torah says Moshe V'Seichem, does Moshe V'Seichem mean when you're settled in the land? So therefore, for instance, by Chodosh, where it says Moshe V'Seichem, it would mean Chodosh only has relevance to Eretz Yisrael, but not Chutz La'aretz. Or Moshe V'Seichem means your communities, wherever you may be. So the Gemara said, Abai says that Reb Shmuel is of the opinion that Moshe V'Seichem means only after you're settled in the land. So Rabbi Shmuel, being the Tanakama of the Mishnah, he's of the opinion that Chodosh is limited to Eretz Yisrael. It's considered mitzvah Atluyus Baretz. It's a mitzvah which has relevance only to Eretz Yisrael. It's agricultural. Rebbe Lezer, he interprets Moshe V'Seichem to mean your communities. So wherever you may be, whatever community may be, even Chutz La'aretz, you're bound by the laws of Chodosh. You're not permitted to eat Chodosh. Okay? So the Gemara says, where do we find Rabbi Shmuel's position stated? Rabbi Shmuel Ahechakoi, and Nesochim. It's stated by Nesochim, by libations. Now, by the Mishkan, in the Mishkan, what did they bring? When they inaugurated the Mishkan, they had what? Carbonate tzibur. You have communal offerings. So you have Nesochim in regard to a carbon tzibur, and you have Nesochim in regard to a carbon yochid, to a private. It's in this week's parsha. It's a famous Siforno. He says that the earliest time we find karbanis brought in the Torah is where? Adam Arishan brought a karban. That karban over there had no libations whatsoever. Later, we find Nesochim by the Mishkan, by the Korban Tzibur. And then you find, the Torah mentions Nesochim by a Korban Yochid, by a private Korban. Why? So he says, because every time we failed at a certain level, we had to compensate for that spiritual loss. So therefore, another mitzvah was introduced to bring us back to that original level. So initially that we're at the special level, you just had a korban. Nesachim wasn't necessary to fortify the korban or to reinstate the person. But when the person fell to a low level, you needed nesachim. What about on a private level? You didn't need nesachim. When yet, after Chet HaMeraglim, the Jews failed very seriously. So the korban yochid, even the korban yochid needs nesachim. After they sinned again, we find the Torah introduces the mitzvah of challah. Challah. Why? Because challah brings about the ultimate bracha. It's a pasuk, the Sifarno. So whenever we find, based on our spiritual failings, the Torah introduces mitzvahs to be able to reinstate us to the level that Hashem wants us to be at. Carbon's not enough. Initially, carbon was enough. First day it was created. No. It's a pasuk in Tehillim. It's based on pasuk in Tehillim. So Rabbi Shmuel Lehechakoi, where did Rabbi Shmuel say his halacha, his position on Nesochim? B'Nesochim, what does it say by Nesochim? Now we have a problem. Until now, the Torah mentions Moshe V'Seichem. They're arguing, what does that mean? Does it mean your communities, or does it mean when you're settled in the land? But in Nesochim, it says more than your communities. It speaks of when you come to the land, when you come to your communities. It says Biyah, and it says Moshe V'Seichem. It says both things. B'Nesochim, Biyah, u'Moshe V'Ksiv. Who? So if that's the case, if it says Biyah and Moshe, so why does Rabbi Shmuel interpret Moshe to mean not your community, but rather when you're settled in the land? Because it's predicated on Biyah. When you come and you're settled. Right? The coming reveals me that the Moshe does not mean community, but rather it means being settled. Hochikamer. Lalamed shkol mokshnema Biyah Moshe ve'ena elalachi rushav yeshiva div Rabbi Shmuel. Wherever we find there's an association between coming and Moshe, the Torah is telling us when you've come to the land and you're settled in the land. So if that's the case, Moshe has nothing to do with community. What do you mean you settle in your community? Wherever it is in the world. And Biyah means when you're coming to the land. So now we have a problem. We cited the Bryce on Amud Aleph. What did Rebbe Kiva ask Rabbi Shmuel? How could you say Moshe means being settled in the land says, Lo svaru eish b'chol moshav seichem. And Lo svaru eish b'chol moshav seichem, what does it mean? Regardless of where you are in the world, in your communities, you should not kindle fire. So how could you say Moshavos means limit Teretz Yisrael? Moshavos means anywhere. But according to what we're citing now, Rabbi Shmuel, that he's only saying his position where there's an association between Bia, you're coming, and Moshavos, by Shabbos, doesn't say Bia, when you come to the land. Right? It says, Lo Svar Eish V'chol Moshav Seichem. Rabbi Shmuel's in agreement, Moshav Seichem means your communities. So what exactly is Rabbi Kiva's question to Rabbi Shmuel? Right? What is he asking? So Moshe says, Omalo Rabbi Kiva, Shabbos Nemek Bo Moshavos. And what does Rabbi Shmuel respond? V'omale, Shabbos Kal V'chomi. Rabbi Shmuel responds, Shabbos is a Kal V'chomer. If you're obligated to observe the kalos, the less stringent mitzvos, Shabbos, which is Chomer, Lo Kolshkein, right? That was Rabbi Shmuel's answer. What does he have to respond? Simple. I'm speaking where Bia is associated with Moshav. But of course, I'm in agreement. Wherever it says Moshav Seichem, it means your communities. So Shabbos, where there's no mention of coming, so there Moshav Seichem means your communities. So what was Rabbi Kiva's question? And why did Rabbi Shmuel even have to respond as he responded? Correct? Namely, what he should say to him, what Rabbi Shmuel should have responded by saying, Ano Bio Moshav Kamino. I'm speaking where it says Bia, coming, and Moshav Seichem. Shabbos, there's no mention of coming. And that Gemara answers, Chadavot Kamarli. Rabbi Shmuel responded on two levels. Firstly, he says, the question is not a question, Dano Bia Moshav Kamino. My position is based upon where, of course, Bia and Moshav. So what does it say? What does it say by Nusochim? It says by Nusochim, when you come to the land, Bia Umoshav. Va'od, the Ko'amrit, Hare Shabbos. And secondly, and that you didn't understand my position, that you thought that my interpretation, Moshav means when you settled in the land, even if it's unrelated to coming, it's not a comparison. Va'od, the Ko'amrit, Hare Shabbos, Shenebo Moshavos, Shabbos Kal V'chomi. Even if, though Moshavos is not associated with Bia, there's no question from Shabbos, because you have a Kal V'chomer. Ala Kalos, you're obligated. Definitely Ala Chamuros, what's more stringent. Howard. Rabbi Shmuel? His reason was his Bia Moshav. That is bottom line. No, that's the Gemara discussing. No, it says Rabbi Shmuel responded on two levels. Rabbi Kiva asked the question. So Rabbi Kiva evidently didn't understand Rabbi Shmuel's position, the basis for his position. Rabbi Kiva understood his position was that he's interpreting Moshav Seichem means when you're settled in the land, conquest and dividing. So Rabbi Shmuel says two. Firstly, that's not what I said. What I said was Bia and Moshav. That's firstly. So there's not even the basis for your question. Secondly, even if the way you understood the question never began, because there's a Kal V'chomer to differentiate between Shabbos and whatever else it may be. Okay? That was his response. The Maika Miflagi. What's the argument between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel? B'kirvu nesochim b'midbar k'miflagi. They're arguing whether they brought libations in the midbar. We're talking about, we'll see in a moment, by a korban yochid. By a private korban, did they have libations in the desert? Rabbi Shmuel Sovar lo kirvu nesochim b'midbar. Rabbi Shmuel's of the opinion that the private korban did not have nesochim in the midbar. We'll see Rashi in a moment. The korban tzibur, it's explicit in the Torah. So until we came there, so the concept of bama did not exist. Correct? In the midbar, we had a mishkan. In Gilgal, for 14 years after coming to Eretz Yisrael, the mishkan was no longer called mishkan, although it was called. We had a mizbeach on the choshes. We had the copper altar. What was its classification? Its classification was bama gedola. It was considered a communal altar. That's when we came to Eretz Yisrael. So Rashi explains, but what do you bring on the communal altar? Although it's not called Mishkan, you bring the Talmud, you bring the communal offerings. So since the Torah already had established that when you bring the Talmud has part of the Talmud is Nesochim, in the Mishkan. So in the Bama Gedola, you have Nesachim, right? You also have Nesachim. It's no different. But what about the Korban Yochid? The Korban Yochid in the Midbar, when you brought it, the Korban Yochid, did it have Nesachim? Rabbi Shmuel says no. Rabbi Kiva says yes. So therefore, according to Rabbi Shmuel, we'll see in a moment, Rabbi Shmuel said, "Lo kirvu Nesachim Midbar." You bring the Korban, yeah. No, they were private. They're private also. Definitely. No, that's fact. That's fact. Well, we'll speak about did you bring the Sochim on the private bombers? Well, we'll see in a moment. That was Mishkan Shiloh. Correct. It was called because I told you to be a Mishkan, the Aron has to be in its location. But when they went to war, they would take the Aron with them. The Aron was not secure in its location. The moment the Mishkan doesn't make a difference. The Aron was not considered in its location. So then the Mishkan now, although physically everything other than the Aron is there, its status changes from Mishkan to Bama. And when it's called Bama, then Bama's Yochid. An individual could build his own Mizbeach on his rooftop in his backyard, wherever it may be. We'll see in a moment. Rabbi Shmuel Sava lo kirvun Nesachim and Midbar. They did not bring the Sachim in the Midbar. So when it says, when you come to Moshvosechem, what is the Torah saying? When you come, because otherwise what else is it talking about? So according to Rabbi Shmuel, that there were no Nesachim in the Midbar. So when it speaks of when you come to Eretz Yisrael, it's about the Korban Yochid. Because Korban Tzibur, we'd have to talk about Korban Tzibur. Correct? But according to Rabbi Akiva, that they brought the libations in the Midbar, both Tzibur and Yochid. So what does it mean, Moshe Vosechem? It's not referring to, right? It means anywhere, even Chutz La'aretz. Rabbi Akiva Sova Kirvu Nesachim Amidbar. They did bring the Sochim. Let's take a look in Rashi. Rabbi Yishmael Sova Lo Kirvu Nesachim Amidbar. What does it mean they didn't have libations in the Midbar? When they inaugurated the Mishkan, right? It says, and it mentions Nesachim, correct? So Rashi says, the Nesachim that I mentioned in the Torah in regard to the Miluim, that's speaking about Korban Tzibur, the communal offering. But the private, the individual karbanos, lo neschayv b'nesachim. There was no obligation to bring the sochim. Elo mibias ha'oretz ve'elech la'ache yerusha v'yeshiva. That's when you come to the land, right? So that's the korban yochid. Rekiva sava kirvu nesochim leyochid b'midbar. Then in the desert, in the Mishkan, when the individual brought his private korban, he also had nesochim. Mishekarvu the rabbim. Hilkach ha-korchoch. So the pasuk when it says when you come to the land you're gonna have nesachim. For the Bama Gedola you don't need it because it's the same korban tzibur, right? You have the lo yitzchro shgar tuna vomedis. It's already in place. Ubiyak hamurakan. So when it says when you come to the land you will, what does that mean? When you come to the land. What happened when we came to the land? The Mishkan became a Bama, right? It's no longer called Mishkan. The first 14 years was called Bama Gedola. When you come to the land and you have a Bama Gedola, that's when you're permitted to build a private Mizbeach, to bring your private korban on your own personal Mizbeach. That's what the Torah is saying. Elam ne Bomas Yochid Shucha Bibi also Legilgul Kol Yudal Shanim. Shana, when the 14 years we were in Gilgal, that wherever you are, not in Eretz Yisrael, Bama, when you have that Bama, because that didn't exist before. So let's see. Amar Abaye. So Rabbi Shmuel that we were aware of at this moment, Rabbi Shmuel, where did he say his halacha? It's only where there's an association between Bia and Moshev. when you come to your Moshe V'Seichem. But what about Moshe V'Seichem without being associated with Bia? What would it be? It means your communities. He's citing another. There's a question, what did Rabbi Shmuel Akrut say? There's another opinion that's not what Rabbi Shmuel said. Omer Rabbi Haitana Tana Rabbi Shmuel, what was learned in the basement of Rabbi Shmuel, his position, Mapik Me'iduch Tana Rabbi Shmuel. It's contrary to the other Rabbi Shmuel. The Tana Rabbi Shmuel, Hoel v'nemra bios betorah, stam. Uporat lo chakos be'echmeim lachi rusha v'yeshiva. Let's say by Chodesh. By Chodesh, what does it say? When you come to the land, when you come to the land and Moshe V'Seichem. So over there, what is Bia? What does it reveal? It elucidates that the word Moshe V'Seichem doesn't mean communities, but it means conquest and settling in the land. Avkol la'acher Yerusha v'Yeshiva. So now let's say I have other locations. Just says Moshe V'Seichem. How do I interpret Moshe V'Seichem? Once the Torah reveals to me that Moshe V'Seichem, when it's associated with Bia, means it means settling in the land. Whenever it says Moshe V'Seichem, unassociated with Bia, it also means when you're settling in the land. Wait. Shabbos is good. So now, according to this position, Reb Kiva is asking, so that's Reb Shmuel's answer. The Gemara is going to ask that later on the page. The Gemara is going to ask that question. So factually, it means wherever. What does it mean? It says don't kindle. It says don't eat nevela. Does it say in your communities? That's a question regardless. That's a question, right? What does it say? Los varish b'chol Moshe V'Seichem. Right? What? Los varish. What does Moshe V'Seichem add? Even though the Gemara says in Zvochim, we do learn something from there. You know, in the Beis Hamikdash, the Kohanim, when they officiated, David doesn't apply to Levium, only Kohanim. Then when they officiated, they were barefoot. So what were we in the winter? I mean, we're speaking about marble floors, stone floors. It's cold. I mean, it was something which was painful. So what do? They would actually light a bonfire at one end of the sanctuary, very large bonfire, and the heat from that fire would heat the whole floor of the sanctuary. So with the Kohanim, when they walk on the stones, they felt warmth. Are you permitted to kindle that fire on Shabbos? So Gemara says, "Los farish b'chol Moshe V'Seichem." In your communities, that's where you're not permitted to kindle fire. But in the Beis Hamikdash, this is not a korban. This is just to accommodate the Kohen that you're permitted. That's the Gemara in Zvochim. I mean, here the Gemara will say Moshe V'Seichem, say something else other than that. What? Kindling. To take wood and kindle. Shabbos in the Beis Hamikdash. For the sake of warming the floor so the Kohanim should not suffer. With stone. No. It's a chatzitza. Even maskis. The Torah says you're not permitted to prostrate somebody. It says. Okay. Good. Right. It's really not really. Right? Yeah, good, right. Because according to this, Moshe said my Shabbos should mean the same thing. So that Rav Shmuel answers, it's not possible because I have a Kal V'chomer. Right. Harvey just mentioned it before. Okay. Many years ago, before you went to a shir, you had to prepare the Gemara. And you had to prepare Tosfos in the Gemara. So this already was an advanced shir. And my mashgiach, Zecharim Rocha, he gave the shir. So the age was 20, 21 years old in the class. And he was very adamant that they prepare well. And one of the students asked a question, and it happened to be Tos's question. So it was clear he didn't prepare. My mashgiach doesn't answer, doesn't respond, doesn't answer the question. 2 minutes later, another person asked the question. Same question. So it was clear the second one didn't prepare. So he said he wasn't listening to the first one, right? And also he didn't prepare. So he says to me in Yiddish, he says, The bist a goyniv min aganif. The first one was a thief, and you're a thief. You asked Tosas' question without addressing it to Tosas. Okay. Okay, so according to this other Rabbi Shmuel, this other version of Rabbi Shmuel's opinion, the Torah initially establishes when it juxtaposes Bia to Moshav, it means settling in the land. So whenever it says Moshav throughout the Torah, although it's not associated with the word coming to the land, Moshav V'seich also means your communities. But the first version of Rabbi Shmuel says no. When it normally says Moshavos, if it's unassociated Bia, what does Moshavos mean? It means communities. It's only when they juxtapose one to another. Does it mean when you settle in the land? So v'idoch. So what does the other one argue? I mean, seemingly we have, it's like a memotzino. Since the Torah here, when it says Moshavos, the Moshav Bia elucidates that Moshav means settling in the land, doesn't mean community, but the other one rejects that. It says, no, it's only where it states it, where if it doesn't say it, not. So evidently, there's only one way to understand it. You have to say that's the exception to the rule. Moshavos normally means communities. However, when Bia, coming, is associated with Moshav, it means when you settle in the land. That's what they're arguing. Is it the exception to the rule, or is it the rule? Does Bia elucidate Moshav? And now I know whenever I come Moshav V'seich, it means Eretz Yisrael, or no? It's only when you have that association. But if you don't have the association, what does Moshav V'seich mean? It means communities. Well, we'll see in a moment. The Gemara is going to discuss this now. Go through it. V'idoch. So what does the other one argue? The other opinion, version of Rabbi Shmuel. Because there's a mitzvah to appoint a king, to install a king. What does it say regarding a king? It also says, when you come to the land, and then it says Moshe Seichem. Okay? It mentions that. And when it says Bikurim, when you come to the land, and it says Moshe Seichem. But if we have a principle that, which is known as Memotzino, that once the Torah establishes a rule, and everything is drawn to that, is drawn from that, what does the Torah have to continuously mention, associate Bia coming with Moshe? It's understood the word Moshe V'seich means when you settle in the land. So evidently, if the Torah continues, has to associate, to elucidate the meaning of the word Moshe V'seichem, evidently what does Moshe V'seichem mean? No, it means communities. Unless, when I tell you, it doesn't mean communities. So that's why the other one argues. That's what he's V'idach, Mishum Davi Melech, Bikurim Shnei Ksum Bo Ke'echot. We have two psukim which are communicating the same concept, and we have a principle, Chel Shnei Ksum Bo Ke'echot Ein Melamdin. Right? One doesn't learn from that because there's nothing redundant in the Torah. The Torah doesn't repeat itself. So that the Torah repeats itself is to teach us what? That this is the exception to the rule rather than the rule. The rule is Moshe V'seich. What does Moshe V'seich mean? Communities. Unless we tell you differently. Because if it always means the same, let Torah write it in one location. And wherever it says Moshe V'seich means when you settle in the land. So what does the Torah have to continuously repeat itself? To tell us, no, normally means communities, unless we inform you differently. What are the two psukim? Melech and Bikurim. Rashi cites the pasuk. Gabi Melech Siv. It says, Ki shavo el oretz. When you come to the land, it says, V'yorashta v'yoshavta bo. It doesn't have to say the word Moshe V'seichem. When you come to the land and you conquer it and you settle in the land. So the mitzvah of appointing a king, installing a king, was not during the 7 years of conquest and dividing. At that point, the mitzvah was to install a king yet. It's only after that period of time ended. 14 years afterwards, the mitzvah came into effect. V'amarta asimolach alay melech ubikurim. What is bikurim? Also, it says kisavo el oretz, and then it says over there, parashanami Yerusha v'yeshiva, and you conquer the land, you'll settle in the land. We'll see by Chala. Since for bikurim, it's only we're talking about kibush v'chiluk, conquest and dividing the land. Melech, it's kibush v'chiluk, conquest, dividing. Chala, it's b'voachem al-oretz. To tithe your dough, that's immediately. The moment they came into Eretz Yisrael, the obligation of tithing dough came about. You didn't need the Yerashta. right? You know, it have to be your land. If it's the produce of Eretz Yisrael, the grain, it has to be, the dough has to be tithed. That's challah. Okay, we'll see. The Gemara will discuss this in a moment. There's a story, Rebbe Lapyan, Zechat Tzaddik Levrocha. He was very close with the Chofetz Chaim. Rebbe Lapyan, at the age of 27, already had Gilui Elio. At the age of 27, famous story. At age, so he would come to the Chofetz Chaim very often. 20s, maybe even before the 20s. And he passed away in the 60s. He was 95. So it could have been even before then. So he came to the Chofetz Chaim, and he was very close. And in those days, he wasn't a mashgiach. He was a yeshiva. In Lithuania, he had a yeshiva. And the Chofetz Chaim tells him, it's important for you to be proficient in Shas. That's what he says to him. So he didn't understand the comment. I mean, he was Rishiva. He had a very significant grasp of Shas. So what do you mean? So afterwards, he said, the Chofetz Chaim didn't say, it was known the Chofetz Chaim had Ruach HaKodesh. So if he made the statement, he said it for a reason. And it had a basis for it. So he started to think. Very often people, what is the basis for their knowledge? For instance, person studies, we have commentators on Shas or on Shulchan Aruch. You have the Ketzos HaChoshen. So how do you know certain Gemaras or certain Rishonim? Because the Ketzos, when he writes his treatise on something, he cites certain sources. So what's your connection there? Did you learn it originally from the source? Or you had to study a Ketzos? So that's why you know the source. So he started to realize maybe much of his knowledge is not really from the source, but rather it's from things he studied, goes backwards. That was his. Very often, how does a person know Chumash? Well, he studied. It says, how do you know it? It says Moshavos and Bia by this and that. It's more kiddushin. What about the pasuk in the Chumash? Right? They don't know Chumash from the Chumash. They know Chumash from the Gemara. And how do you know Nach or Novi or this or that? Also, you know, Tosa cites a certain pasuk. That therefore means that. What about the pasuk itself? They don't know from that. Same idea. So I'm saying, Mitzvah Shem, you know, if we finish kiddushin, you learn it well, you'll be proficient in Chumash. Okay. So we find by Melech and by Bikurim, we find coming and conquering, conquest, and settling in the land. So therefore, as a result of that, the first opinion of Tanav Rav Shmuel says no. It's only when the Torah says Bia and Moshav. That's when Yeshiv, Moshav Seich means settling in the land. It means the land. Otherwise, what does Moshav Seich mean? It means communities. The other one, I mean, how does the other one respond? The other one says no. When it says in one location, it elucidates all the others, but we have multiple locations. And the one we have multiple locations mentioned, that's an indication. It's the exception. So how does he respond to that? You want to answer?
Yeah, it's just I don't know how that would work. I mean, if you're having, if you want to have one as the rule and apply it to everything, so how do you know what the exception is? Meaning if
there's no exception.
It's just that there are no exceptions at all.
There's no exceptions.
There are no exceptions at all.
But if the Torah mentions it again, then you know wherever it's mentioned is the exception. Because otherwise there's no reason to mention it again. There are no exceptions.
Okay.
So what does there have to mention again if there are no exceptions? Right? If you're able, we have a principle known as memotzino. What you find here, I apply to everywhere else. Torah doesn't have to repeat itself. Right? That's the principle. If the Torah repeats itself twice, that tells me it's the exception rather than the rule. Right. Good, good. I see you're recalling. That's why the first thing says it's only when Bia is associated with Moshav. That's when Moshav means Eretz Yisrael, when you settled in the land. But if it just says Moshe Seichem, like Shabbos, what does Moshe Seichem mean? It has nothing to do with Eretz Yisrael. It means your communities. So, but how does the other one respond? The other one says no. Once we set the model, even when Bia is not associated with Moshav, Moshe Seichem, it means Eretz Yisrael. Exactly. So that's what he's going to respond. That's what he's going to respond in a moment. That means, if let's say I'm not able to learn Melech from Bikurim, Bikurim from Melech, so that means neither is superfluous. Each one has to be stated. Because if you could differentiate between the two of them, then even if you have one, I would not draw B from A or A from B. So if that's the case, it's not an indication, it's an exception. They both have to be written, right? Based on the principle, if one cannot be drawn from the other, that means they're not superfluous. There's nothing superfluous here, right? So therefore, it doesn't indicate exception. So the Gemara says, "V'yidoch tzrichi." No, both have to be stated. Melech has to be stated, and Bikurim have to be stated. Why? Because of Rachmana Melech, if the Torah would only write Melech, when you come to the land and you conquer, v'lo kosev Bikurim. Hava amino. Bikurim the komisani lauter. Yeah. Bikurim, this is the new produce. You come, what I say, it's after 14 years, you're benefiting immediately from the new fruits. You don't think you should offer your thanks to Hashem? So I'd say Bikurim should be immediate. The king, the moment you come, you need a ruler, you need a leader. So therefore, I'd say it has to be installed. We'll see in a moment. Separate. Havi Bikurim the Masani Lauter. The Bikurim that you benefit immediately, so therefore the obligation is immediate. So I'd say, therefore, you don't have to, it would be pre-conquest or pre-settling in the land. So therefore Torah says, no. When you come to the land and you settle in the land, it's only after 14 years, despite the fact that you're benefiting all the years. Because of Bikurim, because of Melech, if the Torah would only write Bikurim, that Bikurim's only after you've settled in the land. Melech Havamina, Melech the Darko Lichbosh Lauter. If we're speaking about a conquest, you need a leader. I'd say the obligation to appoint a king would be immediate. You're not going to wait 14 years. So therefore, one cannot be drawn from the other. Each one, despite the fact, logically, rationally speaking, it should be immediate. Torah says, no, it's only after 14 years. After you settle the land, that's when you install the king. That's the earliest. And that's when you have an obligation to bring the Bikurim. But not prior. Go ahead.
With regards to the Bikurim, once you have the Bikurim, you're obligated. The king, that I've just said, you're not obligated. It's an optional commandment. So
It's a question. It's a machlokes Ram and Shmuel. It's an argument in Sanhedrin.
So if we learn like that, how do you learn all this specific? Because
no.
you're not obligated to.
It has nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with this.
You only can do it once you settle.
Meaning, before that, it has no value. Even if it's not obligatory, but it's only after you settled in the land. That's the earliest you could appoint the king, that it has any value. Okay? So he says, good. I mean, so the other opinion says, why is it not Shnei Psum Bon Ke'echod? Because each one cannot be learned from the other. So therefore, there's nothing redundant here. Right? If it's an exception, that's why it's not redundant. But here we're saying, no, this is not redundant, because one cannot be drawn from the other. So this is the rule. That once the Torah reveals to me that coming to the land is associated with Moshev, whenever it says Moshev, unrelated to coming to the land, Moshev, the word Moshev Seichel means when you're settled in the land. It does not mean your communities. Okay? V'idoch. So how does the other one respond to this? The other one's referring to this as Shnei Ksum Bon Ke'echod. But factually, if I'm not able to learn one from another, so why does he disagree? Right? V'idach means the other. Nichtav Rachor Melech, Lo Boy Bikurim. He says, I disagree with the logic. If the Torah would write Melech and not write Bikurim, and you're saying that what? Once the Torah establishes that Moshev means, settling means, doesn't mean community, but it means settling in the land, because I have Melech, that should be sufficient. What would I say? The king who's vital for conquest. And the Torah says, despite that, it's only after conquest, only then does the obligation come about. Bikurim lo koshke. Bikurim, which is not as important as conquering a land, definitely it's delayed only after 14 years, only after once you settled in the land. So what does the Torah have to mention? Again, Bikurim. Evidently, it's superfluous. But there's nothing superfluous. Evidently, these must be the exceptions. That's why it's the exception to the rule. Yeah, it is, definitely. I mean, the other one says differently. The other one said, but because Yinene, right? I'd say conquest, that it's a necessity. You need a king to lead you, to conquer, right? But Bikurim, it could wait. Or vice versa. Here, you're benefiting. He says, no. I would say, it's not, I have a refutation on it. Chalo, if you're going to make this kind of Kal V'chomer, if the king, you wait 14 years, definitely Bikurim. So why is the obligation of Chalo immediate? The Torah says regarding Chalo, B'voachem el Oretz, when you come to the land, you immediately have to tithe your dough. But if it's a cogent Kal V'chomer, Challah should also be delayed 14 years. So why is it delayed? The answer is because you're benefiting. Torah doesn't want you to benefit from the dough until you've tithed. What's Challah? Challah is the equivalent of Bikurim. You give it to the Kohen. So if that's the case, it's a fallacy in the Kal V'chomer. Because if that would be a cogent Kal V'chomer, you should have no obligation to give Challah. So as you're obligated to give the Challah because you're benefiting from the dough, you're obligated to bring the Bikurim because you're benefiting from the fruits, the new fruits. No. No, that establishes the Shnei Ksuvim. That establishes it. Right. Right. If you have the Kal V'chomer, that established Shnei Ksuvim. This is the reason why it's not.
Correct. So this is how we hold that. So we hold that according to the second opinion, that it's just.
There's a question what Rabbi Shmuel said. But what's it has no halach. What's the halachic relevance? Has no halachic relevance because bottom line it all comes down to chodosh, right? Right, I understand that. It's irrelevant which one it is, right? Well, it's only how to interpret the Torah. It's only a question of how to interpret the Torah. But in halacha, there's no halacha difference. The only halacha difference was chodesh. But that's the machlokes Rabbi Shmuel, and Rabbi Lezer. This is the two opinions how to understand, how to interpret Torah according to Rabbi Shmuel. Okay? So now we've squared away Rabbi Shmuel. Now the Gemara asks a question. Okay, Harvey, where is he? Now he's going to ask you a question. If we're saying something which is incumbent on the person is not limited to Eretz Yisrael itself. Moshe, because Rachmana Gabi Shabbos, Lomalik. So Shabbos is incumbent on the person. So why does it say Lo Svara Ish B'chol Moshe Seichem in all your communities? It's unrelated. It's totally superfluous. It's understood. Shabbos is unrelated to Eretz Yisrael. It's not agricultural. Itzrich. It's something which is necessary. Why? Since the Torah, when it mentions the regalim, Moadim, it also mentions Shabbos is Elu Modei Hashem, which we just had on Yom Tiv, right? And then it says Shabbos. It juxtaposes Shabbos to Yom Tiv. So Tiboy Kiddush. Now why there's a mitzvah to what? To sanctify the month. Because he sanctified the month. So therefore, maybe there's a mitzvah. The Bezdin has to sanctify the Shabbos. It doesn't come about by itself. Or there's a mitzvah to sanctify it. Kimodos. Kamash Malon, no. Kamash Malon, no, it doesn't need that. That's Moshe V'Seichem. Not to tell me. It's a comment wherever you may be. But maybe you should have to what? You have to sanctify it. We'll continue tomorrow. Kaddish.